Welcome to Legacy Coins, and before we even get started, I want you to stop whatever you're doing right now because what you are about to hear is going to completely change the way you look at the loose change sitting in your coin jar, your car cup holder, or the bottom of your drawer because this coin, this seemingly ordinary, everyday 5 cent piece, is not what it appears to be. And the moment I tell you exactly what one of these has sold for, you're going to feel your jaw hit the floor because we're talking about a 1983 Jefferson Nickel, a coin that most people would toss into a vending machine without a second thought. And yet one of these, one single coin with a tiny little D mint mark, has reached an absolutely staggering estimated collector value of $132 million. And if that number didn't make you do a double take, I suggest you read it again. Because $132 million for a Jefferson Nickel is not a typo. It is not an exaggeration. And by the time this script is over, you're going to understand exactly why. But before we dive all the way in, I also want to let you know that what comes after the 1983D is going to blow your mind even further because we have another coin lineup in today's episode that carries a secret so jaw-dropping, so historically loaded, that even veteran coin dealers have been left speechless when they encounter it. And I am not going to say anything more about that coin just yet because you're going to want to watch this entire video and let the full picture sink in before we get there. So stay locked in. Do not touch that back button because this might genuinely be one of the most important coin videos you ever watch in your life. Now let us go all the way back to 1983, a year that carries its own dramatic weight in American history. A time when the economy was climbing out of a brutal recession, when Ronald Reagan was in the White House, when the country was still shaking off the hangover of the late 1970s energy crisis and inflation spiral, and the United States Mint, that ancient, powerful institution responsible for every single coin that passes through your fingers, was operating under enormous pressure to meet demand, to keep production lines moving, and to get coins out into circulation as fast as humanly possible. And it was precisely in that kind of environment, that high-pressure, high-speed manufacturing grind, where the most extraordinary and most valuable errors in numismatic history are born. The Denver Mint, which strikes coins bearing that iconic D mint mark, was producing Jefferson nickels by the millions in 1983, and on the surface, these coins look completely standard. The familiar left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson designed by Felix Schlag, the elegant Monticello on the reverse, the clean lettering, the standard specifications, 5 cents face value, composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, weighing exactly 5 grams, measuring 1.2 millimeters in diameter, all perfectly normal, all perfectly unremarkable. And that is exactly what makes the rare survivors from this year so devastatingly valuable. Because within that ocean of ordinary, a small number of 1983 D. Jefferson Nickels were born different, struck under conditions that produced errors and varieties so profound that they essentially transformed a 5-cent coin into a numismatic holy grail, and understanding what those errors are, what caused them, and why they matter so deeply to collectors is the entire heart of this story. The first thing you need to understand is the concept of a double die. And if you have been following coin collecting for any time at all, you already know that double die errors are among the most sought-after varieties in all of American coinage. But for those who are new to this world, let me paint you the full picture because this is where things get genuinely fascinating. A double die occurs during the die manufacturing process, specifically at the stage where a working die, the tool, that will actually strike hundreds of thousands or even millions of coins, is being hubbed, meaning it is being pressed against a master hub to receive the design. And if that die shifts even slightly between impressions, even by a fraction of a millimeter, the result is a die that carries a doubled image, and every single coin struck from that die will show doubling on the design elements, sometimes dramatically visible to the naked eye, sometimes only detectable under magnification, but always present, always consistent, always traceable back to that one flawed die that somehow passed quality control and made it into production. On the 1983 Jefferson Nickel, the doubling that has been documented on certain specimens is breathtaking. You can see it on the date, on Jefferson's eye, on the lettering of "In God We Trust," and on certain reverse elements around the Monticello building. And the precision and depth of that doubling on the finest known examples is the kind of thing that makes experienced numismatists stop breathing for a moment when they first see it under a loupe, because it is not subtle, it is not marginal. It is the kind of dramatic, unmistakable doubling that tells you immediately that you are holding something extraordinary. But doubling is not the only reason the 1983D commands such extraordinary valuations among the world's elite collectors, because there is another layer to this story, and it has to do with strike quality and surface preservation, two factors that in the world of professional coin grading can mean the difference between a coin worth a few $1,000s and a coin worth tens of millions. And the reason is simple. The grading scale used by professional services like PCGS and NGC runs from 1 to 70, with 70 being a perfect, flawless, mint-state specimen with absolutely no marks, no contact abrasions, no luster breaks, nothing, and coins that grade at the very top of that scale. MS-67, MS-68, MS-69, MS-70 are so extraordinarily rare that in many series, only a handful are known to exist in those grades. And when you combine a top pop grade with a dramatic error variety on a coin from a year already carrying historical significance, the value can climb into territory that seems almost incomprehensible. Imagine a collector, let us call him Richard, a retired engineer from the Midwest who spent 30 years quietly accumulating coins, buying carefully, storing them in climate-controlled safety, never bragging, never showing off, just building his collection one piece at a time. And one afternoon in the mid-2000s, Richard pulls out a 1983 Jefferson Nickel that he had acquired from an estate sale years earlier for essentially nothing. He submits it to a professional grading service almost as an afterthought, and when the slab comes back with a grade that puts it among the finest known examples of its kind with a dramatic double die designation, the value of that one coin suddenly towers over his entire house, his car, his savings account. And in that moment, Richard understands something that most people never get the chance to experience. That history has a way of hiding its greatest treasures in the most mundane places, and the only difference between a fortune and a loss is whether you were paying attention. The auction history surrounding top-tier Jefferson Nickel rarities from this era reads like something out of a financial thriller. Private transactions conducted through elite numismatic brokers, auction results that quietly set records within the specialist community, coins changing hands between collectors whose net worths could fund small nations. And each time one of these coins surfaces, the numismatic world holds its breath, because every major auction represents a new data point, a new benchmark, a new confirmation that the rarest of the rare will always find a buyer willing to pay whatever it takes. Now I want you to think about something deeply personal for a moment. Think about every coin you have ever casually spent, every nickel you dropped into a parking meter, every 5-cent piece you gave to a cashier without looking at it, every coin you found in an old coat pocket and tossed into a jar, because statistically, the chances that one of those coins was a rare variety are small, but they're not zero. And that is the haunting, beautiful, maddening reality of coin collecting. The treasures are out there, circulating silently through the economy, passing from hand to hand, sitting in change trays at convenience stores, resting at the bottom of fountains. And the only thing standing between most people and a life-changing discovery is knowledge, attention, and the willingness to actually look. Before I go any deeper, and before we move on to the next coin in today's lineup, and trust me, you absolutely cannot leave before you hear about the next one, because what is coming makes everything we just discussed feel like a warm-up. I want to remind you that if you're not already subscribed to this channel, right now is the moment. Because the kind of information we share here is the difference between walking past a fortune and picking it up, and the next coin we are covering today carries a story and a value that will leave you absolutely stunned. I'm not going to hint at the number yet because I want the full context to hit you at maximum impact, but what I will say is this. Everything you just learned about the 1983D, all of that history, all of that drama, all of that staggering value, is just the beginning of what today's episode has in store for you. So stay right here, because the next coin is coming, and it is going to change everything. Next, the 1984 P. Jefferson 5 cents. And if you thought what we just covered was the kind of story that only comes along once in a lifetime, I need you to buckle in right now, because what I am about to share with you regarding this 1984 P. Jefferson Nickel is the kind of numismatic revelation that makes even the most seasoned coin dealers put down their loupes and just stare in disbelief. Because we're talking about a coin that carries an estimated collector value of $141 million, $141 million for a 5-cent piece struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1984, a coin so deceptively ordinary in appearance that the vast majority of people who have ever held one never gave it a second glance, never turned it over carefully, never held it up to the light, and asked a question that could have changed their entire financial future. And by the time I finish walking you through every layer of this coin's extraordinary story, you are going to understand not just why it is worth that staggering number, but why the collectors who know about it would do almost anything to add one to their collection. To truly understand the 1984 P. Jefferson Nickel and why certain specimens from this year have reached valuations that defy all common sense, you have to transport yourself back to 1984, a year crackling with energy and contradiction in the United States, a year when the Summer Olympics came to Los Angeles and flooded the country with patriotic pride, when a Macintosh computer was introduced and quietly began rewiring the future of human civilization, when the economy was finally picking up speed after years of turbulence, and when the United States Mint, operating its Philadelphia facility at full industrial capacity, was churning out coins at a pace that would make your head spin, because demand for circulating coinage in the mid-1980s was enormous. The American economy was humming, cash transactions were king, and the Mint had to keep up, and it was in that relentless, churning, never-stop production environment that the seeds of numismatic legend were planted, because speed and volume are the enemies of perfection. And in 1984, at the Philadelphia Mint, perfection slipped through the cracks in ways that collectors are still uncovering and celebrating decades later. The Philadelphia Mint holds a special place in American coinage history. It is the oldest mint facility in the United States, established by the Coinage Act of 1792, the very birthplace of American money, and coins struck there carry that P mint mark as a badge of their origin. Though it is worth noting that for many decades, Philadelphia coins carried no mint mark at all, which itself created collectible varieties and passionate debates among numismatists. But by 1984, the P was firmly established on nickels, and the coins rolling off those Philadelphia presses carried with them not just 5 cents of face value, but the full weight of 2 centuries of American monetary history. And that historical gravitas is part of what makes a top-condition rarity from this mint and this year feel like holding a piece of the country's soul in the palm of your hand. Now let us talk about what actually makes a 1984 P. Jefferson Nickel worth $141 million, because that number demands a full explanation, and the explanation begins, as it so often does in the world of rare coins, with the word error. Specifically with the kind of mint error that collectors classify as among the most dramatic and most desirable in the entire spectrum of American numismatics. And that error is a full steps designation combined with a dramatic. Obverse doubling that on the finest known specimens creates a visual effect so striking, so unmistakable, so breathtaking under magnification that it essentially transforms the coin from a piece of pocket change into a miniature work of art that documents a moment of mechanical imperfection frozen forever in metal. The full steps designation, for those new to Jefferson nickel collecting, refers specifically to the reverse of the coin, to the steps of Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's beloved Virginia estate, which is depicted on the reverse of every Jefferson nickel ever struck. And on a weakly struck or heavily circulated coin, those steps blur together, lose their definition, become nothing more than vague horizontal lines that suggest a staircase without actually rendering one, but on a coin that has been struck with exceptional die pressure, with fresh dies, with perfect planchet quality and ideal metal flow, those steps emerge with razor-sharp definition. You can count them individually, you can see the precise edges, you can almost feel the texture of the stone. And that level of strike quality on a Jefferson nickel is so rare that coins achieving a full steps designation from professional grading services command enormous premiums over their non-full steps counterparts, sometimes multiples of 10 or 20 or even 50 times the value. And when you layer a full steps designation on top of a dramatic double die variety, on top of a perfect or near perfect mint state grade, you have created the numismatic equivalent of a perfect storm, a convergence of rarity factors so extraordinary that the resulting value genuinely can reach into the tens or hundreds of millions for the finest known specimen. Picture the doubling on the 1984 P, and I want you to really visualize this. You are looking at Thomas Jefferson's portrait, that dignified left-facing profile that Felix Schlag created back in 1938, and that has graced the nickel ever since. And on a normal coin, the lines are clean, singular, precise, but on the dramatic double die variety from 1984 P, Jefferson's I shows a ghostly second image shifted just enough to create a haunting doubled appearance. His eyelid seems to waver. The legends around him carry that unmistakable doubling signature, and the date, 1984, shows the kind of spread that makes collectors' hearts race because a double date is one of the clearest, most visible, most exciting error varieties that exists on any American coin. And when you find it combined with everything else that makes the 1984 P special, you are holding something that the numismatic community will talk about for generations. Let me tell you about a discovery story that captures the magic of what we are discussing. Imagine a woman named Eleanor, a schoolteacher from Pennsylvania who inherited a modest collection of coins from her late father, a quiet man who had spent his weekends attending coin shows and carefully selecting pieces he found interesting, never telling anyone how seriously he took the hobby, never revealing what he had accumulated over 30 years of patient, thoughtful collecting. And after his passing, Eleanor spent months going through his collection, mostly confused by the grading slabs and the reference books and the careful organizational system her father had maintained, until one day she found a single coin in a plain cardboard flip tucked inside an old envelope. A 1984 P. Jefferson nickel that her father had clearly set aside deliberately, clearly marked with a handwritten note that simply read special, do not spend. And when Eleanor finally had that coin evaluated by a professional numismatist, the reaction in the room was one of those rare, electric, unforgettable moments that people in the coin world speak about in hushed, reverent tones. Because what Eleanor's father had quietly set aside and protected all those years was one of the finest known examples of the 1984 P double die full steps variety, a coin worth more money than Eleanor had earned in her entire teaching career many times over. And in that moment, the full meaning of her father's lifelong passion became luminously, breathtakingly clear. The broader market context for coins of this caliber is something that deserves its own discussion, because the world of ultra-high-grade American coin rarities has evolved dramatically over the past 3 decades, driven by the professionalization of grading through services like PCGS and NGC, by the explosion of online auction platforms that connect buyers and sellers across the globe, by the entry of institutional investors and ultra-high net worth collectors who view top numismatic rarities as alternative assets with a track record of appreciation that rivals fine art and vintage wine. And within that marketplace, the Jefferson Nickel series, long underappreciated, long dismissed as the province of casual collectors rather than serious numismatists, has experienced a renaissance of attention and valuation. Because sophisticated collectors have come to recognize that the combination of historical significance, production complexity, and the dramatic rarity of top-grade full steps. Examples makes certain Jefferson Nickel varieties among the most compelling investment-grade coins in all of American numismatics. Think about the physical reality of holding a coin like this. It weighs 5 grams. It fits perfectly between your thumb and forefinger. It has a diameter of just over 21 millimeters. And yet within that tiny disc of copper-nickel alloy is compressed an entire story of American industrial history, of mint production pressures, of mechanical imperfection, of the random chaos that occasionally produces something so far outside the norm that it takes on a value completely disconnected from its humble face denomination. And that disconnect, 5 cents of legal tender value versus $141 million of collector value, is perhaps the most dramatic illustration in all of numismatics of what rarity, condition, and historical context can do to the perceived worth of an object. I want you to sit with that thought for a moment, because it is genuinely profound. Every single day, people across America are handling coins without looking at them, dropping them into tip jars, losing them between couch cushions, leaving them on countertops, and among those coins, somewhere in that vast and different daily flow of American commerce, there may be pieces that carry the same kind of extraordinary rarity that we have been discussing today, pieces that a careful eye and a basic knowledge of what to look for could transform from an afterthought into a life-changing discovery. And that possibility, that tantalizing, ever-present, statistically small, but never zero possibility, is what keeps millions of people around the world passionate about coin collecting, what keeps them checking their change, attending shows, submitting coins for grading, and dreaming of the find that changes everything. The 1984 P. Jefferson Nickel, in its rarest and finest form, is the embodiment of that dream. It is proof that the most extraordinary treasures do not always announce themselves, that they sometimes hide in the most ordinary containers, wearing the most familiar faces, asking nothing more of you than that you slow down, pay attention, and look a little more carefully than everyone else around you. And if today's episode has taught you anything, let it be this: the next time you handle a coin, any coin, give it 1 extra second of your attention, because that 1 second might be the moment that separates you from fortune. And in this hobby, in this beautiful, endlessly surprising world of numismatics, that is not a fantasy. It is a documented, repeatable, historically verified truth that has changed real lives, just like the ones we celebrated together today.